still.
Very windy here in LA tonight. Very amazing.
So do we need to catch up,
It's
Mark?
crazy here. We should
Do we
probably
need-
catch up. Sure. Should we do
Okay.
it live on Ben Stein show?
We'll just do it right now.
Save everybody some time.
Notice it's incredibly windy, or am I the only one who notices that? Very windy here.
No, I've noticed it too. Everybody with allergies notices how windy it is.
Fantastic.
Yeah, YouTube changed like some weird stuff. I used to be able to notify people, and now it makes you do a video stream. It's very strange. But that is YouTube. And you guys ready?
I'm ready.
Ready.
The world better be ready because we're already live. I'm already watching us.
I want to welcome everyone to the world according to America's humble servant, Benjamin Jeremy Stein. And I want to welcome everybody that's listening and watching in the YouTube chat. We will be reading your comments, suggestions, all of that stuff. But first of all, first and foremost, I want to thank you all who have downloaded our podcast. It's doing amazingly well. And I want to remind everybody that even if you watch the show on YouTube, you could still download the podcast. It really is helpful for us. And remember to leave a 5-star review. I want to thank you guys all that contributed to the show. And but first, let's welcome our first guest of the night. He's new to the show, Gary. I'm going to introduce Mark Clare from the Lions of Liberty podcast. He's an extraordinary podcaster. He's a libertarian extraordinaire.
And
Thank you. Thank you, John.
And he does an amazing job of interviewing. So I encourage everybody to go download his podcast. It's Lions of Liberty. I was actually really impressed by your interview of Ben. You could tell people when that's coming up.
That was
Mark,
very well done.
Yeah. So welcome to the show, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
And of course, a man of mystery. Men want to be with him. Women want to like him.
But they can't find him.
My luck in life.
This from the simplelife.com, simplelifenow.com.
Simplelifenow.com.
The simplelifenow.com. It's something I can never get right. But of course, Gary Collins, a man for all seasons. Welcome back as always, Gary. And
thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. And how are you, Gary? Have you landed safely?
I'm good. Everything's good.
Okay, good. And of course,
it's very, very windy. Scary.
And of course, actor, writer, entertainer, provocateur, lover, sinner, husband, father, and race knowledge. America's humble servant, Benjamin Jeremy Stein. Welcome, sir.
God bless you, sir.
And of course, again, thank you everybody that's listening. But we posed this thought on Parler today, and it's an interesting concept. I think it's we all know that there was let's say a lot of miscalculations with the voting in this past election, and we all know that there's not going to be any investigations done. There won't be any into election fraud, into voter fraud, or any of that stuff.
Who did win?
A hologram.
That's what I was going to say.
Or a hollow.
I don't see any evidence that there was a winner.
A hologram. Yeah. I like that, Ben. That's the best way to say it. You don't see any evidence of winning. Yeah, right. I like that. That's the best way.
Can I back up? Winston Churchill, no dummy, used to call Lord Halifax Lord Holofax, and there is a very, very, very famous set of lines in a poem by T.S. Eliot about the hollow men. And we now have the ultimate hollow man as president of the greatest nation in the world.
It is frightening. And one of the things that I was thinking about is we're terrible at pandering. If you look at the election numbers in this last election, libertarians, which Gary, I think you consider yourself, and Mark, I know you consider yourself, really cost Trump the election in certain states, minus the other miscalculations. In Wisconsin, they cost Trump, and in the Georgia runoff, it cost Purdue. Now that's and I was thinking today as CPAC is going on, Ben Stein, and I'm hearing all these right things to say and great sound bites. The sound bite I'm not hearing enough, and we're talking on the show about solution, Ben Stein, is how do we become better cheaters, liars, or panderers? You know, because Trump did as good of a job as one could do listen, the black community voted in the man that incarcerated and voted out the man that freed them.
You're only telling half the story. Kamala Harris was known as Lock 'em Up Kamala when she was working here in the state of California. They voted her in too. And whereas President Trump took the most generous, lenient policy imaginable towards criminals and African American criminals in particular, not that there are very many of them, and he and they just kicked him in the teeth.
Yeah, no, I mean, and there's absolutely, and I realize, you know, it's one of those communities that is never going to vote, you know, Republican. But
that is not true. That is not true. And I'm sorry to be talking while eating, but that's the nature.
Well, then stop eating.
No, okay. Wait, will you take this away, Tiffany, for a few minutes? Here, that's a damn good suggestion. The black community historically was all Republican until Goldwater endorsed the segregationists. Then they became Democrats. And Lyndon Johnson particularly went after the black community. I'm not going to repeat what he said on the air because it involves very, very cruel use of the N-word. But we all know what it was. And we're not going to do the same as Lyndon Johnson. We're not going to do the same as he did. But he really knew how to pander. I would say read about the life of Lyndon Johnson and you'll get an idea.
Okay, so speaking of pandering, how do we pander, Marclair, to your community? How do we get libertarians? Does it mean we have to say we're for the legalization of drugs? What do we have to do? Because Trump was sort of the most libertarian president of in a generation, as far as no wars, no, you know, certain things. How do we get the libertarian vote? Because again, Marclair, 32,000 votes separated the House and the Republicans from taking the House.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I would consider myself more of a philosophical libertarian with a small L. So whether or not one votes for the big L Libertarian Party or not, I don't really have a particular prescription on that. I think that's an individual choice. You can make arguments for a vote for Donald Trump. You can make arguments for a vote for the Libertarian candidate, and a lot of that might come down to the state that somebody's in. So if you're in a close state and you really feel strongly that maybe Donald Trump, while nowhere close to any kind of actual philosophical libertarian, might provide a slightly, might put us slightly more in that direction than say Joe Biden, it might make sense to vote for Donald Trump than to just toss a vote away. Which, admittedly, it depends on how you want to view a vote. I would never call any vote a wasted vote, or I might call every vote a wasted vote, actually, depending on how you look at it.
This election, every vote was a wasted vote.
And I think overall our system is in many ways rigged at every level, not even as much so on the vote counting level, but more so on the propaganda level, more so on the level of who is what conversation is allowed into the debate and who is promoted enough to be allowed into the debate. Occasionally, I think something is allowed to seep through the cracks. In 2008, a guy named Ron Paul seeped through those cracks just a little bit, just enough to gain some traction and some excitement around a large segment of people. But someone who seeped through those cracks in a much bigger way, I think, was Donald Trump. Again, while I would not call him a libertarian in any way, shape, or form, he certainly had an anti-establishment edge, and I do believe that he was not sort of meant to be in the place that he ended up ascending to. I think he was seen, we have evidence of such, that he was seen as sort of a Pied Piper candidate. Hillary Clinton's campaign did work directly with CNN, with CNBC, with CNN and the debate commission and everybody to promote Donald Trump because they thought he would be the easiest person to defeat. So even when someone gets through,
Mark, I want to thank you. I have never heard that, and it's really interesting.
This is all part of a lot of what came out in the WikiLeaks emails about 4 years ago. So I mean, there's direct collusion, direct conversations between people in that campaign and members of the media wanting to promote Trump as the easiest person to defeat. That was obviously a major miscalculation. So, but even when we had someone that kind of broke through that system, like Donald Trump did, it was kind of through an accident of the very same system trying to do what it always does and rig the entirety of the election election. So, of course, there's voter fraud in every way, shape, or form at every level. It's just a matter of how big it might be. The stakes are too high for there not to be people trying to commit fraud on every side.
But this is where we always say it might be on every side, but the left does it a hell of a lot better.
Exactly. They're true
Gary
believers.
Sorry?
They're true believers.
Yeah,
Republicans.
but, Mark, when was the last time, with great respect, of course, that in the post-war era, that the Republicans won by committing a large amount of fraud like the Democrats did in 1960 and in the last election that just happened?
Let's see. Not that I really know of, to be honest. I think I can't really name anyone that I can definitively say this was certainly fraud and a fraudulent election.
Gary Collins, I bring this up. I read something very interesting today. 49% of libertarians said they would go and vote for that their vote would have been for Biden, while 26 or 29% said it was Trump. Fraudulent election, mail-in ballots aside, that spread gives Trump the win in the election. Just specifically go to Wisconsin with Jorgensen, go to Georgia with the runoff seats. What do we have to do to get libertarians on board? And I know, because Gary, you always say you don't go either way. You know, you're sort of the bi person. How do we get people, Gary?
It doesn't look, I have to say.
Gary goes every way. Come on.
Yeah. For me, it's hard because I picked the best candidate. I truly don't believe in political parties. I believe in the best candidate, the best person for the job. You know,
that's very funny. You're the only one.
I know. A man on his own island. Where's Wilson? But, you know, it's one of those things where there's so many issues. There's so many problems that I don't know how we fix it. I really don't. For me,
I do. I'm not allowed to say.
You're not allowed. Well, to get people on board and to have them kind of coalesce is the best way to put it, right, Mark? I think that the Republican Party has to open up and allow other thoughts that lean more right in, which a lot of those ideas that lean right also lean a little bit left. Like, you know, a lot of libertarians believe in the legalization of drugs. You know, for me, a guy who worked in it, not as a dealer, but, you know, marijuana is Schedule 1. That makes absolutely zero sense.
Marijuana is Schedule 1? You mean
Yes.
marijuana is the same level as Demerol?
Yes.
It's Schedule 1 while
Well, how
being
could that be?
legal
It's
in almost every
marijuana
state
is
in some way.
street
Yeah. And Republicans always
No, Ben just asked you. Ben just asked. I want you both to answer this because we're both curious, because I want to learn from you guys tonight. How could that be possible?
It shouldn't be. I mean, it's the most ridiculous thing ever known to man. It is a friggin' plant. Well, we know the problem with hemp. That was because the Hearst, empire outlined it, because hemp came in and it got marijuana at the same point. Marijuana and hemp got bundled together. And it's just our drug laws are asinine. They make no sense.
Could you explain something to me? I believe I am the only lawyer in the group.
Yes.
Why, if marijuana is Schedule 1, why isn't there a marijuana stores in every street corner? And I can't buy Demerol or Quaaludes to save my life.
You're making his point, Ben.
Yeah,
It's asinine and it makes no sense. You're using logic in a case where there's not a logical answer.
Let me back up and just ask a basic question. I want to buy some Quaaludes. Where do I go?
You go to Gary.
Yeah, you go to your doctor and get a prescription.
I think Quaaludes are completely illegal, aren't they? I believe.
They don't exist.
Yeah.
Oh,
but Mark, do you have an answer to Ben's
Ben's
question?
be called Quaaludes, but trust me, the pharmaceutical industry has what you need. They have it all.
Again?
I said the pharmaceutical industry has whatever you need, Ben. You just got to go to the right doctor. You'll find what you want.
Believe me, I have the right doctor.
Time to give it up.
But Gary, Mark, I want to get back to this. So, because this is very confusing to a lot of people, the difference between, so when you guys call out for the legalization of drugs, right? Is there a separation between marijuana and heroin, or is it just everything together?
Well, for me, when we're talking about drug use and we're talking about the law, the only thing we should ever be asking is an individual harming someone else? Or are they harming themselves? It's possible you could be harming yourself, and you can harm yourself in a variety of ways through a variety of substances. Many people harm themselves every day through alcohol, through sugar, through eating junk food, through going through the drive-thru at McDonald's. There are numerous ways that people harm themselves, but I don't want to legislate that
That's
at the end of the day.
bad for you? Are you saying McDonald's is bad for you?
I'm saying that it might not always be the best health choice, but I don't want to make that choice for you or anybody else, just like I don't want to make the choice of whether someone uses marijuana, whether someone even tries heroin. I don't want to make that choice for them from a legal perspective. I might have other advice in my personal life. In my personal life, I might have advice for you about whether you should not eat McDonald's or not, but I don't want to put you in jail if you do. If you want to enjoy a Big Mac, if you decide to take, to that eating a Big Mac every day is what you want to do, it's what gives you satisfaction, you're willing to take whatever health risks may be associated with that, I think that's perfectly fine. I'm not going to encourage violence upon you by agents of the government.
That's very kind of you. Thank you.
Well, here's the thing, though, with legalization of drugs. It's very simple. All the laws that you need are already on the books. Under the influence. If you're riding your bike under the influence, if you're at work under the influence, if you're driving a motor vehicle under the influence, guess what? That's against the law.
How do they tell if you're under the influence of marijuana?
They can do a field sobriety test, and they can still do a blood urine test, mainly blood.
You can detect. Wait a minute. Now, this is something I did not know. You mean to tell me you can detect marijuana in the blood?
I believe so.
Gosh. I believe they even have breathalyzers now.
Yeah, the breathalyzers.
Ben, it stays with you.
God bless you. Thank you.
Okay, and if you just tuned in, you are listening to The World According to Ben Stein. I want to thank everybody in the YouTube chat. I am monitoring it. I am looking at it. I also want to remind everybody you could get Ben's newsletter at benstein.substack.com.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. You can interrupt.
While we are taking a bit of a break to identify ourselves and talk about where we can be found, and also talk about technology like breathalyzers for marijuana detection. It is Black History Month. It's true we're coming to the end of Black History Month, but this is Black History Month. I'm not sure why they chose the shortest month of the year for Black History Month, but it is that's a
racist,
systemic racism as usual. But we have callers calling in and texting in and so forth. And since it is Black History Month and we're talking about technology, I think it would be a good thing and very helpful for the whole country to talk about some of the great technological achievements contributed to America by Blacks. So starting now, let's have some people calling in with them. Okay, that's all I wanted to say.
Okay, and on that note, you could also download all our podcasts. And thank you for listening, and thank you for doing that. Thank you for making me a little forgetful right now, Ben Stein. But we're joined tonight by Gary Collins and Mark Clare from the Lions of Liberty podcast. Seriously, people, download both Gary and Mark. They are tremendous in person. They're tremendous minds. Okay. And I want to welcome everybody back to The World According to Ben Stein. So and we will get into Black History Month in a second.
It's kind of interesting that the powers that being made it the shortest month of the year.
Hey, as a Jew, Ben, we don't even get a quarter of a day. They get 28 days. Okay. And think about the contributions we've given.
So we're waiting to hear people calling in with the Black contribution.
Yes. Yeah. So Ben, you're going to get us just canceled off every airwaves. But so here's two communities that I've thought about as far as pandering that I think we could get, right? So I think we could get the libertarians, which I know not incisable, but they do have a strong voice, and the gay community. These are just two things I was thinking about today. Just communities that Republicans, because we're talking about solutions, and I don't forget about Republicans, the conservative base, the Trumpican base, two communities that we could go directly after, that we could achieve, that could actually flip the next congressional election, the next presidential election, because I don't know what more of a job Trump could have done for the Black community than he did, guys. Ben Stein, what say you?
I think it's a brilliant idea. And by the way, I believe that libertarian and gay mesh completely. There is no reason whatsoever why the Republican Party should not be fully pro-gay. I mean, I live in Beverly Hills, and I also have some property in West Hollywood, and West Hollywood is a very largely gay area. I spent a lot of time there, and those gay people are just absolutely great, wonderful people, and I don't see why we shouldn't make a real extraordinary effort to bring them into the Republican Party. They belong there. They belong in the party of free people.
Couldn't agree more.
It's the far right Christians, Ben.
Well, okay, so we love them too, and I personally am the most pro-life person on the planet. But we want all people, and we want to bring everybody into the big tent. The big tent should be the Republican Party.
You just raised a great point, and I'll let you. I'll throw this all out too. Ben raised a great point. So the evangelicals, we gave them the courts, we tried to. We tried to. And Trump was the most pro-life president of my lifetime, at least.
No. But Reagan was more so.
Yeah, but okay, so Reagan. But so he was one of the most pro-life presidents of our lifetime. But Ben, again, Trump was the first person that spoke live to them. Okay,
Reagan did it in person.
No, Trump did, not Reagan. Reagan did it you could check this, you could Google it. Reagan did it via video, not or whatever at that time. Trump actually spoke to them in person.
Okay, well, if you're right and I'm wrong, I apologize, and I will be impressed, but I don't think you're right.
And vice versa, and I am right. But Mark, Claire, I say to you, and I say to you guys, how do we get these communities? Like Ben said, fabulous community, your community. How do we bridge? How do we get them? What bone is it that we need to throw the libertarians and pander like we do everybody else?
I'll tell you right now the keys to getting libertarians interested enough in a Republican campaign or a Republican ticket to at least capture the attention of a large percentage of them. That would be to come out very strongly against the war on drugs. Now, that might be a hard pill to swallow for a lot of Republicans, but that is not the same. I think we really need to hammer this home. It's not the same as being in favor of drugs. It's not the same as being pro-heroin, pro-cocaine. It's in favor of treating any problems that stem from drugs as a humanitarian issue, as a medical issue, as opposed to a criminal issue. So that would be one area where you can come out very strongly. Let's say just something as simple on a presidential campaign level, perhaps say, come out strongly and say, we will take marijuana off of the Schedule 1. Just start there.
Have our Republican candidate come out and go,
that might work too.
You know what? Do it. Absolutely. Yeah, if that gets the libertarians.
Wait a second, Judah. Then what are we? If we're in favor of people being high, what kind of people are we?
You know what? Like his point, people are going to do it with us or without us. Absolutely.
I disagree with that. I will, and so I think Gary does too. I think if you encourage young people to get high, then in addition to all the other pressures making them get high, they'll get even more of them will get high. And it's not good for them to be high. They're supposed to be studying. They're supposed to be learning. They're students. They're supposed to be studying.
Can I be honest with you? I'd rather get some of them getting high than being taught by the teachers they're being taught by.
But because at least being taught by the teachers unions are fully Bolshevized by now.
That's my point. I'd rather them be high than have to listen to those lessons. But what's Gary's opinion?
In school anyway, they're going to be listening even while high.
Well, the teachers are already high. Look at their interpretive dancing moves. Fantastic. You know what? Eric makes a good point. I was just reading in here. We are looking at this a little out of whack because of the skewed numbers of the election. Actually, Trump did very well in those groups that we know of, because you got to look, we're looking at 10 to 15 million votes skewed that changed the whole actual demographic profile of the voting community. We truly don't know what those real numbers are, but we do know that Trump got 75 million, more than any other president besides running for president besides Biden. So we know those numbers are skewed. Actually, Trump, if we had real numbers, could have done very well with libertarians and blacks and Hispanic. We don't know. That's the problem, is the numbers are completely out of whack.
What happened after the election to Mr. Biden?
He went and ate oatmeal and took a nap.
Where is Mr. Biden?
Supposedly he was at the White House, but you're right. You raise a great point. But this is why I set this up with saying, until they do something about voter fraud and election fraud, We have to come up with alternatives to get those extra 100,000. You know what? Because they'll cheat again and they'll do those things again. But we have to get more people, as many people as possible, in the tent as humanly possible.
Here's a problem with that, Judah.
Are you hinting at the Democrats' election was stolen?
I am hinting that it was.
Give me my.
Not that it was stolen, that it was manipulated.
Yeah, of course.
Ever so delicately.
Here's the thing, though, Judah. Here's the kind of flaw in your plan. They had Dominion voting machines. They had it all rigged in the places they needed to have it rigged. I don't think 100,000 votes would have changed it because they were getting real-time data and they were changing the data as it was coming in.
Well,
I think what would have happened is the way they had it rigged this time.
Mike Whaley's from. I like them.
Well, you know what I mean, though. I think they had it. They had.
I know. I totally understand what you're saying. We
all understand what you're saying. But
Eric is a big advocate of this. You're right. As the votes were coming in, they had exactly the right amount of votes to then dump on top of whatever votes. So the 130,000 vote dump in Wisconsin. I totally get that. We have to figure out our own voting dump, okay? And the best way to do that, in my own humble opinion, Ben, 32,000 votes. That's what separated the House.
Judah, my dear friend, one of my best friends is a man named Arthur Best. He's an incredibly smart guy, incredibly smart. Taught law for many years at Denver University. He was my roommate. He's really smart. He used to be Deputy Consumer Affairs Commissioner in New York. He was in charge of negotiating the price per cubic yard or something like that of trash that they paid to the trash haulers. You can imagine what the trash haulers are like. And finally, at some point, he said to them, "What do you care what price we set? You're counting the number of cubic yards. What does it matter what price we set?" And it's the same thing with the votes. It doesn't matter what we do as long as the Democrats are free to count as they wish. As long as they can do that, we can never beat them.
Never win.
Never gonna win. That has to stop. That has to stop. How does it stop? We have judges who have no balls. We have the FBI totally in the hands of the other side. How do we get it to stop? I mean, I don't see any way to make it stop.
This is why we're in a very dangerous situation culturally, because there's a large segment of the population now that is starting to feel, quite understandably, that there's no place for them politically.
Absolutely. That's a real serious problem. This is exactly the way the South felt in 1860. It's exactly the way the South felt in 1860. And we are heading there at breakneck speed, and it's really scary.
And just for the record, 720,000 Republicans did not go out and vote in the Georgia election.
Why?
That is because they didn't believe their vote counted. And that's seven.
Okay, I agree with you. That's insane.
There's 720,000 people didn't go out and vote. And that is obviously if just 45,000 of them would, or 150,000 of them. Yeah,
I would argue with that a little bit because the Republicans threw out, I agree with Remzo, the Republicans threw out two terrible candidates who literally insider traded and got away with it. And then they throw them out in a very, very controversial and pivotal election. They couldn't have thrown two worse people to turn the tide than those two.
Judah is totally right. Even though they were not ideal candidates, had we gotten the Republicans to turn out, we would have won, and it would have made a big difference if we had a Republican Senate. It would make a huge difference. So, Judah, you're totally right. Who brainwashed the Republicans into not voting? I mean, what crazy person would not vote in an election as pivotal as that? Who got to them and fed them the dope or whatever it was that they took?
You also have to look at why those Republicans were not inspired to go out and vote for that candidate. Then, like Gary pointed out, when he tossed out terrible candidates, you can blame demoralization or, being, not thinking the vote counted as certainly factors. But at the end of the day, if people are sitting at home and not coming out, that's on the candidate, that's on the party, that's on the people presenting those candidates to, as the solution.
Absolutely.
And then not buying it as a solution.
Well, that's a good point. But those were the candidates, and if we were Democrats, we would vote for them anyway.
Well, that again, the Democrats are true believers. They'll look past everything.
That's what my point sort of is how do we as a party, I mean, when you look at our Senate right now, which is we have 50 senators, there are maybe 6 reliable senators in that group of fighters, maybe 6 Republican senators that are willing to go to the mats for us, maybe 6. And we can never count on those 50 all voting the same way. That is frightening.
Well, they did confirm Kavanaugh.
No. But that was like still a nail biter. At the end of the day, we didn't know where those votes were going. And there is no party line when it comes to Republicans anymore. I mean, we have at least 6 or 7 senators, Ben, that are fly by night. You have Mitt Romney, Murkowski, you have all these different people that call themselves something, and they could do the McCain at any point and go like this.
This is why progressives ultimately win, because progressives are not confined to the Democratic Party. They are all over the place, including in the Republican Party. So the Republican Party is almost a progressive light party in many ways, at least certain segments of it.
By the way, Jude, I would love to know, one of our viewers just sent in something very smart, which is, I'd love to know how many Democrats didn't vote in Georgia too.
Yeah, that is.
I could tell you one thing: all of them voted.
Even the dead ones.
Plus
all the dead ones voted too.
They all filled out their mail-in ballots. I could tell you that much. They all voted in Georgia.
Maybe so.
And Stacey Abrams made sure of that. And on that note, if you just tuned in, you are listening to The World According to Ben Stein. I want to thank everybody that's contributing. I love that everybody's reading what people are writing. That's what makes this show work. That's what makes this show great. Of course, America's humble servant, Ben Stein, makes this show great. But I want to thank everybody.
Still waiting for those contributions for Black History Month.
Oh my God.
Look at George Washington Carver.
Yes.
About 140 or something, more than that, years ago, invented several hundred uses for the peanut.
Except one.
Over 100 years ago. So
except one.
Was it unimaginable number of breakthroughs since then?
Was it the Black female mathematician that was very instrumental in the Apollo and NASA program?
I think it was 3. There was 3 women, I believe.
Now we're getting rolling.
And I came up with that actually hit me. I didn't look that up.
Now we're getting rolling.
That was the Family Guy episode with George Washington Carver, where he had almost over 140 patents for peanuts, except for peanut butter.
So let's go.
We have Harriet Tubman. She invented the Underground Railroad, or helped to.
Okay, well,
that's an invention of sorts.
There you are. Yeah, no, 100%. And if you want to welcome everybody back to the show that will be getting canceled very soon, to The World According to Ben Stein. It is Black History Month. It's almost about to end. As Ben Stein has
we've already made, if I may say so, just what we've said so far, pointing out the systemic racism of making it the shortest month of the year. And also the contributions that a Black American made to the space program, and the peanut. I mean, we are already making progress. Let's keep going, guys.
So, but I want to bring up a point to all you guys that Trump is at Mar-a-Lago right now, and somebody compared him to sort of being like a mafioso, and I think that is what the party needs. I think the party needs somebody that's sitting there like the Don, and that you got to come and kiss the ring in order to get approved, like you get the Trump seal of approval, because that's a big thing the Republican Party is missing. A lot of people do the yap, and they get into power and they do zap, and they do nothing, Ben Stein. I think it's a brilliant idea for Trump to be sitting there being the kingmaker right now and giving the approval of the candidates that he thinks could win in 2022.
I don't see why it shouldn't be Trump. I mean, Trump did a hell of a lot to revive the party, and Trump reached out into the mainstream of America and brought in a whole lot of people who were not otherwise in the Republican Party. Yes, I think he's a fine person. But by the way, someone just sent in a contribution saying that Roots, the famous miniseries Roots, which I'm sure your guys are too young to have watched it, but anyway, that it was fictional. That is absolutely not true. It's completely fact-based.
And LeVar Burton was exceptional on it. Mark, Claire, what were you about to say?
And I was just saying, I mean, I think we're going to see a real fracturing in the Republican Party in these years ahead, because Trump is going to sort of sit outside there as a kingmaker in many ways. At the same time, you're going to see those same elements within the Republican Party, the never Trump elements, the Mitt Romney types, if you will, that are going to try to sort of maintain their hold on their positions of power. And it's going to be very interesting to watch. In the meantime, there's still also that sort of libertarian conservative element of the Republican Party, represented by people like Rand Paul, Thomas Massey, and how they're going to play into the whole thing. It's going to be very interesting to watch. At the end of the day,
why can't they be? Why can't Trump and Rand Paul be friends?
I think they are. They are. They're fairly friendly, I believe.
Yeah.
No, I happen to think libertarian views and conservative views go extremely well together. I think Trump actually showed that more than any president in a long, long time. But again, we have to get rid of, I mean, let's get back to the voter fraud thing, because it's the elephant in the room that nobody is willing to talk about. Okay. That there may be 5 or 6 senators that are willing to talk about this. Until we figure out this, Ben, and you brought it up, and Gary brought it up, I don't know what we do. I don't know how we get past the voting machines, the mail-in voting, the dead people voting, the people in mental institutions voting. I mean, like, do we have to find our own, resource of dead voters? I mean, is that, Gary, what the other side has to do?
Well, I think if it becomes a cheating competition, it's all lost at that point. I think some people right now are actually quietly trying to fix some of the voter problems through the courts. Right now, some of the more respectable Republicans are doing it, but they're being quiet about it. They're not pounding their chest. I've heard of a couple. I believe they're doing it in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Georgia. I think they have some momentum in there, and they're trying to change the laws. I may have heard wrong. I could have.
Well, wait a second. With all due respect, with the greatest respect to you, Gary, I think there are already laws on the books in some of the key battleground states.
Oh, they're already there.
The exact kind of votes that took place and that turned the election for the Democrats. There are already laws, not technicalities, just broadly forbidding those kind of votes.
Well, the fact that the Supreme Court wouldn't hear it is mind-blowing to me. Before and after. That really blew me away. They go, well, nothing to see here. We're just going to stand out. And I'll go, that's what the Supreme Court is for.
Of course. The no balls monkey.
Oh, and that's the thing too, is where the pressure needs to be applied for the voter fraud. Is the Supreme Court needs to rule on this. They need to do their job.
But they are nutless monkeys. Have you ever seen the movie Tropic Thunder? A really good.
That's a good one.
Black History Month, phenomenal. Assistant to Tom Cruise.
Yeah, I don't know if that would fly today.
Didn't I play some part? And Tom Cruise says a nutless monkey could do your job.
Yes, he said that to Bill Hader at the end of the movie.
Right. I'm shocked that Robert Downey Jr. has not been retroactively canceled for that movie, because we've seen a lot of people retroactively canceled. But I guess he's in good standing.
They've tried to. He was actually on the Rogan Experience or Experiment, whatever it's called, and he was having to defend his role in Tropic Thunder. But again, everything is time and place.
True? Is that true?
Yes, it is. And when the whole point of that role was how controversial in the movie was that he was doing that sort of thing.
And it wasn't his voice, it was dubbed. But anyway, but that was a great movie. By the way, the consensus of the people on this show is that Tropic Thunder is probably about the funniest movie ever made.
That was a good movie. I
like amazing. I had never heard that was dubbed. I always thought it was him.
I thought it was him too.
My hopes and dreams are shattered.
Watch it closely. I think you'll agree it's dubbed.
Okay. I'll watch it with a closer eye next time.
But again, we are so you're right. The Supreme Court did it. The Supremes who Trump voted in. I mean, Trump literally did for Kavanaugh what no other Republican
it's unbelievable
would have done for this guy. And we could all agree that I think we could all agree that Kavanaugh was absolutely innocent of whatever. But the guy did the guy does, on the other hand, he likes his beer. I mean, and that's the God's honest truth. He
was
probably
a college student. Imagine that. He drank beer in college. Oh boy.
And probably later in life, but totally innocent of the. And Trump was. There were people trying to implore, upon Trump to get a new candidate in there, and Trump stood by this guy. And it's like, Kavanaugh, my God, have a bit of a memory, Ben. I mean, what is it, Ben?
I think he did rape that girl.
Yeah,
I think he did, and he was bragging about it.
I think Ben's being totally.
I think so too.
Of course, he didn't do it.
No, but you know what? At this point, well, why are we defending him? But
course.
Ben, can I ask you a question? As a person that's been in Washington, out of Washington, what happens when you get there? What? How does the swamp just swallow you in? I mean, to us laymen, to Mark, who's got a brilliant show, to Gary, who is almost swamped in. How does it get you?
Well, they invite you to parties. They get you high-paid consulting and lobbying contracts, and I think that's it. I mean, I will tell you, my parents were at one point, were very highly placed in the Washington swamp, and it didn't move them at all because they were so faithful to Nixon. They would have committed murder for him. But generally speaking, you can be sucked into the swamp. I mean, look, we saw it with Mr. Nixon when the Republicans in the Senate just completely deserted him over no evidence at all, just because the media was hammering them. So the media is the beautiful people. Everybody wants to be part of the beautiful people. How does that song go? How would you like to be? How does it feel to be one of the beautiful people? It's a Beatles song.
I only know the Marilyn Manson song, so.
I thought the Beatles was all the lonely people, but maybe it was all the beautiful people.
Feel to be one of the beautiful people.
Gary, how did you get out? What made you decide? What hit you that you were able to escape?
For me, it was, and it had been going on for a while. And like I've talked about before, you hear this with a lot of more long-term people who did what I do. Finally, you realize that you're not making a difference. A lot of people who did what I did, we do it because we believe in the cause, we believe in our country, we believe in being patriots and giving back. Once you realize that you're just a cog in the wheel and you don't matter,
all in all, we're just another brick in the wall.
Exactly, Pink Floyd. And
Anti-Semite.
And at a point, there's people who will chase the carrot and go to the end and be miserable, and then there's some who go, enough's enough, and they leave. It's hard. I watched it. What they do, see. The political swamp is a mafia. They know who, when junior congressmen, senators are coming in, they already know the baggage on these people. So they know who to target and who to get on what committee. They already know. Hey, and
Siri,
if you're one of the good ones,
by the Beatles,
they'll put pressure on you.
Then we can't.
I'm kidding.
I didn't find them beautiful.
I just did that to upset you, Judah. Sorry. Anyway, it was a great Beatles song called How Does It Feel to Be One?
Gary, sorry to interrupt you. Go on.
No, I was just saying that it's when I got to remember, I was literally standing in groups around these people. I was listening to them talk. I was protecting them. I don't know any other way to say that. I couldn't wait to go home at night. You don't want to be around these people. They're god awful people, a lot of them. And
smell the
I don't
brimstone.
know how you what's that?
You can smell the fire and brimstone, huh?
Yeah, exactly. And I think if you're honest and you go in with a good heart and you try, their goal is to break you at this point. And we've seen it. I was a big fan of Alan West. They broke that guy. I was around Colin Powell. Colin Powell was a really good guy. They crushed that guy and turned him into something I don't even recognize anymore. I don't know what to do. I just think that the good people who go in are just going to get their butt handed to them. I don't know what else to do. It's too corrupt. It's too, I don't know. What do you think, Ben? I don't know anymore.
Well, when I worked at the White House, I would not say, with the greatest respect, except for John Dean, and this is just an opinion, I don't think I knew a single corrupt person. John Dean Yes, that's my opinion. Believe me, others could differ, and God bless him if he differs. But the people I worked with were honest, straight shooting people, very straight shooting. And I remember vividly at night when I was handed an enormous box, like a giant box, like a set of the Encyclopedia Britannica before it was on disc, uh, of Mr. and Mrs. Nixon's income tax returns for the last several years. And I was told to go through it and see if it looked to be anything questionable. And my boss, Dave Gergen, a really great guy, said, obviously, we want, no matter how bad it turns out, tell the truth. So I told the truth, and it was a real big problem for the Nixons. But no, but I did not see corruption. At the Federal Trade Commission, yes, I did see some corruption, but not a great deal. Not a great deal.
Mark, let me
There's
ask
a
you
lot
this
more money
question.
involved now, though, too, Ben.
Well,
We're
and
talking-
I was not a policeman or anything like that.
Yeah, there's a lot. We're talking a lot of
I
money.
was high all the time.
And Ben, it's what you knew, right? Nobody was coming to you, getting you in on the scam, because you were an
There was
honest
no
guy.
scam.
So it's like,
Scam was by the Democrats. There was no scam.
No, I'm not referring to Nixon. I'm referring to the swampy things. You're an uncorruptible type of person. So when somebody might be doing something a little shady on the side, I'm not referring to Nixon. I'm referring to other people in the swamp. They weren't going to bring
they
you
weren't going to
in.
bring it to me. They knew I would rather kill.
Right,
than do
right.
anything.
So it's hard to gauge. But Mark, let me ask you a question. As we talk about the Supremes, you being a libertarian, you being what are your thoughts on that?
I think the Supremes are a fine doo-wop band, from what I've heard. I
best,
love their music, and I fully support them. Yeah. Do you mean in terms of what the Supreme Court in general, or?
Yeah, as what Gary was talking about, the Republicans, get vote. We should have the majority of votes.
Well,
Nothing gets heard.
I think for a lot of people, what moments like this are going to be where they think, oh, we have someone like Brett Kavanaugh on our side because Trump supported him, or, oh, we have Amy Cohen Brown on our side because Trump supported her. And when they see that that is not the case, for a lot of people, that's what we might call a red pill moment. When they realize that the system is not what they believe it to be, when they realize that doing the right thing, or just going and getting the most votes, or whatever it may be, doing the right things to participate in the system as it's been portrayed to us, does not actually get you what is sold to you, does not actually get you a fair outcome, does not actually get you what you see as your proper voice, your proper level of participation. That's what a lot of people are going to take from this. And again, I don't know the solution other than to encourage people to simply start looking away from the centralized power of Washington, D.C. Stop looking at this as the center of importance. And it's hard to do that when it is, when it is where all this power is centered, where it is where all the lobbyists go to control everything from, how medicine is regulated towards what drug is on what schedule. All of this is controlled by very powerful interests. So it's hard to say don't focus on that. But at the end of the day, the fact that we all cede that power to people in Washington, D.C., the fact that we all cede, this is everything that the government has, all the power the government has, is because ultimately the citizens agree it should have that power.
No, I respectfully disagree. The government has all the guns and the monopoly on violence. And if I may respectfully say something, the whole beauty of libertarianism is to say we do not want anyone to have a monopoly on violence.
Absolutely agree.
Government has 100% monopoly on violence, and that is what makes government so scary, and that is what makes libertarianism a thing of beauty.
You're absolutely correct about that. But at the end of the day, I think we live in a society where the large percentage of our population don't really view things that way. They actually view the center of power as legitimate. They don't see this issue of the monopoly of violence that you've so beautifully stated is a wonderful tenet of libertarians, that we actually see it for what it is. But the majority of my fellow man don't see things that way. So to them, the power structures are legitimate. To many of them, the monopoly of violence, that's not even something that's in their mind. They just really see the government as what we should have, and that whatever laws and regulations might come from it are legitimate because the system is legitimate. But what a lot of people are seeing now,
my dear friend Mark, there is where our teaching job comes from.
Mm-hmm.
There is a big job teaching, very big job,
and that's why I do my show, and that's why I try to get these ideas out there more.
And God bless you, sir, for it.
And that's why I teach individual freedom, because if it's for the people, by the people, not by the government for the government. We rule the nest, not the federal government.
But Gary, I love you and you're wonderful. And we love you. But they've got the guns. Yes,
you can say
They don't have the guns. Okay.
There
Oh,
are more
sorry, they do.
Americans own more guns by far than the federal government has.
Okay, we're not going to have an armed revolution. Nobody.
No, I agree. But what I'm saying is that's why right now they're going after guns because they know Americans are armed to the teeth.
I totally agree. They really mean it when they say they want a monopoly on violence.
They 100% mean it.
I lived part of the year in North Idaho. We saw
Live
Ruby
with me,
Ridge.
Ben.
We know what it means to have a monopoly on violence. We saw the FBI murder a woman in cold blood, murder her child in cold blood. Nothing happened to the people who did that. That's a monopoly on violence. So that's a very scary situation. And I think people in the back of their minds realize that's going on.
Well, now a deadly weapon is a set of buffalo horns or whatever. So
yeah, exactly.
You know, has anyone figured out? Is that guy out? Is he still in?
I don't know. Let's find out. Who knows all the answers? I would say.
Yeah. I mean, you know, he's
wait,
probably.
Didn't you go to bar mitzvah school with him or something?
Didn't he?
No, I didn't go to bar mitzvah. I didn't go to bar mitzvah school with the guy in the horns. I went with the guy the guy in the fur hat sat behind me in synagogue.
Same as the guy with the buffalo horns.
No, two totally separate people. But I'm actually, Mark and Gary and Ben, I think people need to hear about what libertarianism is, because I don't think people know. Okay, because somebody like Rand Paul is very good. He's very different than his father, let's just say. And people look at Ron Paul as the definition, and let's just say Ron Paul might be a few cards short of a deck on some things, or he appears that way to some people, and his isolationism and certain things. So what I want you to explain to people what your definitions of libertarianism. Ben did a beautiful job in explaining, but for the younger generation, what is it exactly?
I will say Ben did a great job of explaining the concept of the monopoly of violence. And I think that was very well stated, and that's something that libertarians do recognize as ultimately what government is. It is basically the legal, the group of people that has the legal authority over over violence, essentially, over who's allowed to use violence and what amount, and they get to decide it. But for me, libertarianism is essentially, I'm kind of a big tent guy, actually, even though I consider myself very philosophically pure. But to me, I'm willing to accept anyone into the fold who ultimately tries to view political philosophy and view politics through the concepts of individual rights, through the concepts of individual freedom, not thinking of laws, not thinking of regulations, not thinking of anything in terms of groups, in terms of certain groups having certain rights. Everyone should have the exact same rights. They should have the exact same rights, and those rights are essentially should be negative rights. The only rights that should be stated are in terms of what the government should be able to not do. It should be what individuals are able to not do to each other. And if you're allowed to essentially, I would view everything in the most simple way I could break it down would be to say every action is ultimately a right or a crime. If you have the right to do something, it means it's an action you're taking that is harming nobody else. And I would consider any action you can take that is not harming another person directly as a right. Any crime I would consider an action, usually by the government, as a matter of fact, in our current system, an action that is impeding the right action, you might say, that an individual can take. So if two friends are in the park just hanging out and maybe one of them hands another one a beer, maybe a park's a bad example, because that's actually kind of, if two friends are on their porch, let's put it that way, handing each other a beer. I don't want to get into the public spaces thing, because it's kind of a different thing. And then some third party, perhaps from the government, for whatever reason, doesn't think they should be handing each other a beer. It could be a joint, it could be a needle, whatever it might be. That person that is stopping that transaction or stopping that, to me, that would be the person committing the crime. And in that case, that is how the government acts in many, many transactions. And I was just using drugs and alcohol as one thing, but it could be anything. It could be whether it's hiring someone from a different country at a lower than agreed upon rate as deemed appropriate. It could be just about anything. But if there is no victim in a situation, then there is no crime. That's generally my summation of, at best I can do, summing up libertarianism without taking over the remainder.
Oh, they can always find, my dear friend, they can always find a victim. Believe me, they can always find a victim.
That's true, and that's what makes a lot of these things tricky.
Well, that's the trickiness of all of this. Yeah, I mean, that really is the rub in all of this. Is that listen, I'm not for the legalization of certain things. I'm truly not. but I understand your guys, you're thinking on it. Weed, and I understand what Ben's saying on it. There's no easy answer like the left wants to make. The left has easy answers. They really do. The left has easy answers because they wake up every day, they look outside and they say, this is what we're going to do today. There's no compass, Gary.
Well, here's what I'll say. Here's my definition of libertarianism is your ability to exercise your own free will. That's it. Free will has consequences. You decide.
Were you listening to Rush? Were you listening to Rush before this?
I drink my beer out of my new swag. And also when it comes to the legalization of drugs, or that, when we start discussing that, we're looking at the shiny object instead of the root cause. Why do Americans consume so many mind-altering illegal drugs that are habitual forming? Why? That's where we need to get to the root cause of why are Americans trying to escape life in some instances. Not all. Hey, I'm not saying smoking pot makes you a drug addict. It doesn't in most cases. What I'm saying, though, is we've got a dichotomy, too, of illegal drugs and then legal drugs like our hillbilly heroin, which is heroin produced by pharmaceutical companies. Totally fine. But yet I can't go smoke a doobie out in the park. I'm confused. You know what I mean? We're oversimplifying a more complicated issue of the root cause of the problem.
Well, here we are completely ignoring the question I asked about 45 minutes ago about Black History Month and Black contributions to American technological progress. And
we said because Mark brought up the Supremes. That was a good one. There you go. That was a great contribution, right?
Hendrix created
rock. That was not technology, but okay. I can once again, systemic racism has reached even into this show, and we're keeping out the contributions that these wonderful people have made. But if I may respectfully say so, to go back to the beginning of the show, we are going to have to somehow get really, really great candidates, because even with the media shitting all over him, Ronald Reagan won big. Even with the media shitting all over him, Richard Nixon won big. They eventually got him out of there by pure chicanery and lies. But a great candidate can win even against a stacked deck.
Look, George Bush won. I mean, I think that's proof positive that anybody. I mean, you take Jimmy Carter and George Bush. They're two perfect examples of anybody, only in America. But again, I think these are really complex issues. I do think we have some senators that are willing to fight. I think Rand Paul is a changed man, as somebody brought up in the YouTube channel. I think Rand Paul, more than any senator that I've seen, has really taken this to heart. I think Rand Paul really and Hawley and Cotton and Cruz, somebody that I've changed my mind.
President, he's great.
Somebody that I've changed my mind on, really feels the pain of the American people. We need a lot more senators in there right now to get for that to be contagious. I don't know if it is. I don't know if most of them just want to stay in the Senate, guys, for another 4 years and just don't.
It's a good job being. If you're rich to start with, can't do it if you're not rich to start with. If you're rich to start with, being in the Senate is a lot of fun. There are 30 different parties every day. You get a staff, they kiss your ass, you get a car, you get drivers, you get police protection. It's if you ask for it.
Making this sound pretty good, to be honest.
Great.
I know. It's almost like being
starting to rethink everything.
As a rich man's club.
Yeah.
And on that note, if you're just tuning in, you are listening to The World According to Ben Stein. I've been educated this hour on libertarianism. I honest to God, guys, I wasn't, it's one of those words that people throw around and you don't know what side you guys are going for. If there's, because if you're a conservative, you vote Republican, because being a conservative doesn't mean,
we don't have a side.
Yes, we do.
We pick the best candidate.
We need you guys, okay? I want to start. We need the libertarians and we need the gays, okay? That is my commitment. I will do whatever possible to get the gay community and the libertarian community on board the conservative Trumpican train
for the gay.
Sorry?
Anything for the gay community, really?
I will do it. I will.
Anything, Judah? We can go out. We can all go out in West Hollywood one night, and you can probably win some over on your own.
Blocks from West Hollywood, Judah. We'll just drop you off and pick you up a few hours later.
May have to.
I'm a 20-minute Uber right away.
Can I be honest with you guys? And I'm very upset that I didn't do this when Cox was running for governor of the state of California. My biggest gripe was that I wanted to get T-shirts made up in West Hollywood, Cox for Cox, and I wanted a slogan for Cox. I love Cox, and I thought Cox really missed an opportunity to get a whole voting base based on his last name. But that's just me and my humble opinion.
Okay, well, Judy, you know, my car is parked right downstairs from our studio here. We're less than a 5-minute ride from West Hollywood. There's a very nice bar there.
Too bad bars are closed. Well, I guess there's outdoor. We have some outdoor dining areas.
The Abbey is outdoors. I believe it is the most, and a lot of people.
I know where it is. I'll take you there.
A lot of people don't know this, and we all live in California, but Gary now lives in Arizona. The Abbey is actually the most successful bar, I believe, in the world pre-COVID. And that's your lesson on economics for the night. And if you just tuned in again, you've been listening to The World According to Ben Stein. I want to continue this discussion next Saturday night because I want to make Saturday night sort of fun night, libertarian night, bringing more people into the tent. And that's our Saturday night special goal is how do we make, yes, Ben?
My mama said when a boy gets a girl, she'd take a trip around the world. Hey, hey, boys, yeah. Boys, yeah. Well, there we are. We're making our.
Who's saying that, Ben? Ben, who's saying that? Ben, who's saying that?
I think the Shirelles.
And Black History Month, another group, technology. And on that note, Gary Collins, tell people where they can find you.
TheSimpleLifeNow.com. Everything I do is there.
I beg everybody, go to this site. Gary is the real deal. He truly, I mean, he's intellectually honest. He is the real freaking deal. And we are both Rush devotees. So go to Gary's site, go to Gary's podcast, listen to it. You will walk out a better human. Mark Claire, I'm starting to listen to yours. So tell people where they could find you.
I wish I had things in my life as simple and straightforward as Gary does with just one thing, but I do have a little bit more. I have, of course, lionsofliberty.com. If you want to learn more about libertarian ideas, I'm always engaging in conversations there. You'll be able to hear the great Ben Stein on Lions of Liberty. That's going to air March 8th.
Sorry, I beg your pardon. I'm terribly sorry, Mark. I thought you were finished. I'm sorry.
Yeah, my interview that I just recently did with Ben, that's going to air on March 8th. But our patrons, we have an amazing group of a couple hundred people who fully fund our show. So they do get early access to those interviews. And that interview is getting awesome feedback so far. Especially, we had a great conversation for a little bit about what you did touch on today momentarily, too, about President Nixon and how he was screwed over with Watergate. People are loving that part of the conversation. So look forward to that, Lions of Liberty. And then as well, I also co-host another podcast along with a friend of this show, Remzo Martinez. We are the co-hosts of the Second Print Comics podcast, where we nerd out each and every week about comic book characters, comic book storylines, and just looking to give people a little bit of a reprieve from all the politics, from all the stress of life, something people can just listen to and have a good time and enjoy. So you can check that out. Go ahead.
I'm terribly sorry.
No, Ben, they actually want you on. Say this again. Because
what was Russia's main big song?
Tom Sawyer, Limelight.
Hey, Tom Sawyer, mean guy, modern day warrior. No, I'm sorry, was it modern day warrior, mean pride?
Yeah.
But no, Ben's actually interested in this comic book thing, and if you could get him, if you could figure out a way to get him 2 comic books, he will love you a long time. Ben, what are the comic books from the 50s?
I like the ones that are Tales from the Crypt. And also, I forget what one, but about World War II ones.
All right, Remzo and I are going to be on a mission. We're going to get you some Nick Fury and the Howling Commandos. That's a good World War II comic. We're gonna find.
And I encourage everybody to listen to this stuff.
Parents were born, my dear friend.
I encourage everybody to listen to this stuff because it's really interesting. It takes you away. It gives you a good escape. What comic books what original sci-fi was meant to do, and what we hope the show achieves to, that's our achievement with this show, is for an hour and 3 minutes for you to have a little peace of mind, to quote Boston. And on that note, I want to thank everybody in the stream. I want to remind everybody, even if you listen to the stream and you listen to us on YouTube, to please download the podcast, give us 5-star reviews. It means the world to us. We thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We hope you have a great rest of your weekend. Gary Collins, love you. Mark Claire, beginning to like you. Ben Stein, love you.
You'll get there.
Have a great rest of your weekend, everybody.
Can we finish up with a scroll of the contributions of Black scientists to American technology? Well, we'll do that next show.
We'll see everybody Tuesday night.